alcohol. So I'm going to make a statement, and then I'm going to turn this over to City Manager and the Chief to make further comments, and then we'll hear from everybody else. Occupy Eugene has demonstrated against the economic inequities in this country, and it's worked to alleviate some of those inequities at the local level as they apply to the unhoused members of our community. Their camp has been a key part of their local efforts. As you know, last week our city manager and police chief expressed concerns about growing unsafety in the camp. Council heard this and voted to end the waiver for the park on January 11th, giving some time for Christmas to pass and a thoughtful transition to take place. Unfortunately, last night there were several violent incidents at the site, one resulting in a serious life-threatening injury to one individual. This has caused me to see the wisdom in moving sooner than originally decided. The safety of the public and our officers has to be foremost for us. That is why I've called this emergency meeting. I ask Council to end the camping ban waiver immediately and to direct the City Manager to begin the process of closing the Occupy Eugene camp. I ask Occupy Eugene, the broader community, and Council to come together in unified support of the peaceful closure of the camp. It is my hope that just as hundreds of community members have donated and volunteered in the demonstrations and camp, they will now turn their efforts to helping people with this transition through volunteering and donating to organizations that provide services for the homeless. It is important to us that all the good lessons learned from the Occupy Eugene camp experience be used to help us move forward. This is already true in terms of council direction to expand our existing car camping program and to support providing shelter for those with mental health and addiction issues this winter. Our staff has been meeting with service providers and Occupy Eugene to plan for helping people as the camp closes. A homeless action task force is being formed, and the first meeting will be December 28th. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to City Manager and the Chief.
Thank you, Mayor. I received a call from Chief Kearns last night around midnight indicating that a possible homicide had occurred at the Occupy Eugene site. Throughout the night and early morning, our officers had responded to several incidents at the site, including the possible homicide. Upon finding the victim lying on the ground without a pulse, police officers and a camp medic immediately began CPR, allowing the person to be transported to the hospital. I contacted and briefed the mayor on the situation at about 12:30 a.m., at which time she asked me to call a special meeting of the City Council to consider the status of the OE camp. It is still unknown whether or not the victim will survive. I strongly recommend that the Council direct me to close the camp and ensure the restoration of the space now occupied by OE as soon as practicable. Our response throughout OE has been measured and reasonable and adaptable as the conditions have evolved on the site. Recently, additional measures were put in place, such as lighting and prohibitions on weapons, in response to safety concerns for our officers and the campers. Tragically, the incidents from last night confirmed the dangers of the site. If the Council chooses to close the camp, we will continue to reach out to OE representatives and nonprofit service providers to restore the site with thought and compassion, mindful of the need to immediately restore health and safety. This is an opportunity for the city and OE to come together in the shared best interests of the community to transition purposefully. Rather than divide the community, this is an opportunity to share compassion by supporting and continuing to support the efforts of St. Vincent de Paul, Egan Warming Center, Shelter Care, Looking Glass, White Bird, Eugene Mission, and others in their immediate and long-term response to the OE campers and the unhoused in our community. We are prepared with an ordinance to immediately allow camping in tents at car camping locations as part of a transition. All councilors must consent to discussing the ordinance today. I recommend that council consider and pass this ordinance today. Glenn can walk us through that procedure if the council chooses. Lastly, I want to thank Chief Kearns and his exceptional leadership in navigating a complex and challenging situation, and to his officers for their professionalism, caring, and courage. Chief.
Thank you. I'll just remind you that I have been reporting to you on a number of incidents that have occurred in the camp in order to give you a sense of what the state of safety is there and other factors. There's been a number of thefts that have occurred in the camp which have raised concerns, and also it has been reported that people inside the camp have committed thefts in and around Eugene and have stored stolen property there. Drug use occurs there, drug sales. There was the incident of the 15-year-old girl involved in prostitution, and a variety of others. Several violent acts that have raised my concern include the assault in which one man was attacked by two others, one wielding an axe. He deflected a blow from the axe and ultimately suffered a broken leg and spent some time in the hospital. And in another that occurred just a few minutes after the City Council meeting a week ago, Monday, involved an incident where a peacekeeper intervened in a dispute in the camp and was strangled, and then the suspect in that case drew a knife. Turns out the knife had a blade 12 to 14 inches long and threatened others until police arrived. Last night's incident, actually officers assigned to the camp last night were pretty busy. Before this particular incident occurred, they intervened in 4 other disputes, several of which were physical. In the first, officers responded to a subject who was upset and throwing things out of a dumpster right next to the camp. Apparently, according to the subject, Occupy Eugene volunteers had taken his personal belongings and placed them in the dumpster because he hadn't camped there the night before. And he was causing quite a disturbance. Turns out he had an arrest warrant. He was lodged in the county jail. In another one, a subject assaulted a camper, totally unrelated to the reason that he was upset. The subject was angry because someone had stolen things from his tent, and he assaulted one of the first people nearby. He was arrested for assault and taken to the county jail. In another incident, officers heard an argument, and when they responded, they saw one person in the camp push another violently to the ground. Turns out the victim in that case did not wish to press charges, so officers arrested the suspect for disorderly conduct in the park, and he was lodged in the jail. And then at about 10:40 p.m. in the northeast corner of the park, officers were summoned to another fight. When the first officer arrived, he found the victim, in this case a subject who suffered life-threatening injuries. He found the victim face down on the ground in sort of a kneeling position and unconscious. Officer and the medic rolled the person over. He had blood on his face. There was no pulse or breathing. Both the officer and the on-site medic associated with the Occupy Eugene camp administered CPR until Eugene fire medic units arrived. The subject was transported to a local hospital where he's received care, and it's unknown at this time if he will survive. We responded with our violent crimes unit and our forensic evidence unit. The 2 men who are with and probably fighting with the subject have been interviewed. We've consulted with a Lane County prosecutor, and it's unknown at this time if charges will be brought against the 2 men. The victim in this case, I would give you more details to his injuries, but I don't know yet if his family's been notified, but there is no indication that weapons were used. No indication at this time, anyway. Since this incident happened last night, I directed that we increase our police presence there, and that's already occurred. We'll maintain a larger police presence until the camp is closed or another decision is made. Some people have said that the acts of violence in the camp probably would have occurred anyway. I think to some degree that may be true, but the critical mass of people with multiple diagnoses and chemical addictions that are living in the camp have raised the risk, and last night's disputes and serious assault are evidence of that, I believe. We have developed contingency plans for how the camp would be closed, and they are methodical, and it calls for a methodical and deliberate approach that will include the services of social service organizations that can help support those who are homeless that reside in the camp right now. It has been gratifying to work together with some of the Occupy Eugene representatives. The city manager and I have met with them a number of times, and our liaisons, of course, communicate with them regularly. Those conversations, although we don't agree on all things. We have been able to find some constructive places where we've been able to find solutions, and I'm hopeful that as we join together to peacefully close the camp, that relationship will continue just as it has.
I guess I would also like to add that Councilor Zelenka called in this morning, and although he's on a flight out of town, he expressed in email and over the phone his support for the ending the camping ban waiver immediately. So just I'm putting that out for everybody. All right, Andrea, your first up.
Well, thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Pete and John, for your updates, and appreciate all the work that the police department has done around this. I can only imagine their frustration with us as we try to be visionary with issues around the city on how things we would like to see work out. And this is one of those situations where I guess it didn't go in the direction that we had hoped it would go. And I appreciate the mayor's comments and asking for the end of the camp, because I agree with that. I have been saying that I'm at my wit's end, like I would have with my children, because that's basically a lot of my experience in dealing with situations. I always think back to when I was a parent, because that's been my primary role in my life. So, City Attorney Glenn, do you have a motion for us?
Yes. The first motion would deal with closing the camp, and then if the council approves that, if you decide you want to deal with the ordinance, I can walk you through the steps of that. The motion that I would recommend would be, I move to revoke the exemption for overnight camping granted by the council on December 14th, and to direct the city manager to ensure the restoration of the space now occupied by Occupy Eugene as soon as practicable.
Thank you for that. I'm not sure with process if that would be something that...
You can put it out there if you
Okay.
wish.
The only other word I would like to see in there is a peaceful, somewhere along the line. I mean, I know that's an expectation that we kind of have of both Occupy Eugene and the police department, but I can't impress upon folks enough that there really we need to stay as peaceful as we can with this. And my other concern is that there's no time frame associated with this, and I don't want to extend the work that needs to be done. It's, in my mind's eye, it's obvious that things aren't moving in the direction that we had hoped they would move in. And so giving more time isn't really necessary as far as I'm concerned, but I do know that it's going to take time for the camp to break down, time for people to figure out where they're going. And so I don't know quite how we address that.
We have a plan in place that will that makes room in our implementation of clearing the camp for that sort of thing. I hesitate to give details of what our plan is, because I think it can be done much more safely if we work together with OE from this point out to get there.
So I would like to put the motion forward, but I want to hear what other folks say, so I think I will.
We're going to wait.
I'm going to wait, and if another counselor wants to take it on, I'm okay with that, too.
Hey, Pat, you're next, and then Mike.
Madam Mayor, would you place me at the end of the queue at this point, please?
Mike?
Thank you, Mayor. I've had the same concerns from the beginning, and it's primarily safety of the people involved. It appears there's now a majority to support that position, and I'm pleased to hear that. I have held the same position from the beginning about the event itself, that I would defend anyone's right to protest any time and any place, but I don't believe camping is necessary to do it. I think inevitably it leads to a result like this.
So I have George Brown.
Thank you, Mayor. Well, yeah, this unfortunate violence last night is exceeded the threshold that we were all kind of talking about for public safety, I believe. I'd like to know more evidently we'll have, a little bit later today, we'll talk about the expanding the car camping, and we'll have my understanding is we'll have to have a public hearing to make that immediate. And so I would like to hear from some of the OE people what their thoughts are about the incidents from last night. Basically, we're still kind of following the plan that we approved last Wednesday. I think it's still a good plan to transition people out. We just have to speed it up now a little bit more, I believe. So that involves getting, for lack of a better term, the problem population, the chronic alcoholics, the drug dependent, the people with untreated mental health issues, should be transitioned out, probably starting immediately, somehow to warming centers, be made aware of warming centers, be given rides over there to the warming centers. And then you've got and of course any thugs, and the police have been doing that, people with, warrants, people that are causing problems there, who are not necessarily members of that first population that I mentioned. So we just have to speed it up now, I guess. But and then also, I think we really need to pass the car camping ordinance today and make it go into effect immediately, because my understanding is some people have left the camp already because of growing safety issues, and so a lot more people would move to places that are already accepting car campers, but they can't put their tent up there. And I feel that some of the agencies and the churches would allow that immediately, probably tonight, if they could, and others would have to think about it for a while. So, and then I suppose, I don't know, I'm just trying to think ahead here, then Occupy Eugene would have to set up their political base somewhere else for their message. So this is good. I'm really sorry about what happened. I hope the man that was attacked survives. But basically, I just see this as following our original plan, which I think was very sound. We just have to speed it up a little bit. Thank you.
Pat?
Thank you, Mayor. I'm a bit pleased by any of this. I'm sorry nobody at the table is, no matter how we may say we're pleased or this looks good. This doesn't look good. It's not good, and it's nothing to be pleased about. We're giving these folks a very short time to transition to right now. Back in October, November 1st, October 31st, we had a chance to give them plenty of time to transition. But we decided to push it out to the limit. And I predicted at the time, a number of people predicted that it would go to the limit, and it would continue to go until it was the limit where it was just absolutely unacceptable in the community. And that is the point that we're at right now, where we're hearing emergency messages from the mayor. We're having another emergency meeting, and we're making a snap decision as to how to deal with the lives of people who should have had more time to, in my estimation, should have had more time to prepare for this. If we'd looked at this originally in October, if we hadn't pushed it out, and if we hadn't pushed it out again in December, we would have taken action, given folks a chance to make adjustments sooner than this. I'm sad that it came to this point. I'm extremely sad that it came to this point, and I'm particularly saddened for the people in the Occupy Eugene movement who had nothing to do with any violence and had nothing to do with police calls. Unfortunately, the movement that was created surrounding them turned out to be somewhat of a draw for people who were inclined to cause police calls, were inclined to violence. It's a shame that happened, but it's not unpredictable that it happened. And we're at a sad point, and we're making a tough decision that's going to leave people in a difficult spot at a very difficult time of the year to be moving from one place to another. So I'm sad we're at this point.
George Poling?
Well, I'm not going to rehash everything I've been saying since the very first meeting, because my opinions have not changed. I'm still a little upset about where the money's coming from. I suppose we can address that issue during the next budget cycle. I think taking the $100,000 from the road fund and the money that we're going to use for a gang task force and was the other one?
Parks.
Parks. I think that was an ill-advised move, and trust me, from the emails and phone calls and contacts that I've received, as well as my fellow counselors, I'm sure that message went out the wrong way, that money is not what it was intended for use. But again, I tried to explain that the common person doesn't understand how budgets work. I got a conversation with one gentleman who finally says, okay, I understand. I finally understand that there's a difference between gas tax money and bond measure money and general fund money. But he said, in the big picture, the road fund is still $100,000 less. So hopefully when it comes budget time, we can restore some of that money and maybe restore some of the faith that we were starting to build with the voting public. As far as when this should be shut down, immediate is soon enough, not soon enough for me. But if the chief has a plan to systematically go about in getting cooperation to remove this camp, I support that, chief. I saw in the news this morning where one of the camps, and I don't remember if it was Denver or Baltimore or wherever, but when it came time to close down the camp and the police had to show up, they set fire to their own tents. And that showed a lack of real judgment on the occupied people from that community. I know that the folks that we have working in our group here in Eugene have been working with the police department and the city have more common sense than that. I just hope that it goes smoothly and that our officers come out safely, as well as the campers. And I may be hoping for too much, but let's just keep our fingers crossed.
Okay, Mike?
Thank you, Mayor. So, with the motions that we passed last Wednesday, the $300,000 was supposed to be for, as I understood it, for us to transition over the period of last week until the 11th of January. Do I have that right?
Two pieces. One would be any additional cost for police and any other staff that need to provide overtime or services through that period of time. And then the second was actual transition services. 2/3 of that was for projected police overtime.
So do you still, I guess, what do you anticipate the expense likely being now if we were to vote to close this immediately? What do you suppose likely expenses would be over the course of, within the framework of the authorization that we gave, just round numbers?
What I don't know, but I can kind of address maybe a little bit where you're headed and where George is headed. What our intent would be is to take a look at what isn't spent and come back to the council with an opportunity to reappropriate that in whatever you choose to do. It could be the road, it could be the parks, or something like that. So
well, I would take it one step further to say that I don't think it would pass today if I made a motion to reverse our decisions of last Wednesday. But I certainly would hope that since we're not going to have that period of time necessary for transitioning, that certainly we're going to look to be spending less in the process.
I would anticipate that also. I just don't know how much.
Okay. And to address an interesting comment that Pat made here, I mentioned that I was pleased. What I was pleased about, just to be specific so there wasn't any confusion, was that we're going to deal with this, in my estimation, more responsibly now. Last week I mentioned that I thought it was irresponsible for us to have made the decision that the rest of the council made, and I'm happy to see us, in my opinion, acting as a council responsibly about this. I would be very interested in hearing more about your plan to deal with transitioning on a shorter timetable. Thanks.
Betty? And then Andrea.
Thank you. First, I would never have voted to establish a homeless camp, but it happened. And since it's happened, I think there have been some good things as well as some less than good things that happened there. And I don't think we should be precipitous about throwing people out. I want to know, where did they come from? Do you know? Has anyone done any surveys for the chief? I guess you've been there as much as anyone.
This is a question for you, actually.
I'm sorry, I was reading notes that are being passed around.
Where did the people come from?
Pardon me?
Where were the people before they were camping? Has anyone done any surveys? to
Yeah,
find out?
some of the people were sleeping on the street, some were not. Some are protesters that are staying in the camp, but I think many of them were homeless people living in and around Eugene.
So they already existed, and they could have been having problems without the camp. Fights and other, whatever is disturbing. And where do you think they're going to go now?
We will do our best to provide them with services, but it's unlikely that we'll be able to identify services for everybody in the camp. So they will probably return to some of them will return to the same living situation they were in before.
And you think that will be better?
I think that the camp, as it's designed and managed, is less safe than the situation before, yes.
And is there any reason you couldn't just respond to people who are committing crimes or attacking other people and ask them to move somewhere else instead of asking everyone to move? That's for the city manager and the chief, I guess.
Go ahead.
Well, then, if we were to do that, then the city would be managing the Occupy Eugene situation rather than Occupy Eugene running their own protest.
I don't quite see that. If these same people were down by the river or down by the bus station and something happened, you would respond, right?
Yes.
I think part of it is also just the number of people and the situation that the camp creates. And you can chime in, Pete. If you're an officer responding to a place in which there's maybe one or two people in some sort of altercation, it's different than responding to a situation where you have an altercation between a couple of people and you have another 50 or 60 people there immediately in the situation itself. So I think you're entering two completely different kinds of environment, one of which is inherently more dangerous than the other. And you don't know who is actually going to create any of the problems, so you don't know who to actually take out of the camp prior to them committing any issue. So I think the environment itself just creates an inherently more dangerous situation for both the officers and the campers.
Yeah, I also heard you ask if there's a way to manage the people who are allowed to be present in the camp. And if an institution or an... Pardon me?
No, I didn't say that.
Okay, then I misunderstood you.
No, I meant, just as if they were some other place in the city. Can't you respond in the same way and remove the people who are causing problems?
Yeah, and
As if they were down by the bus station or if they were at the Halt Center or wherever people might exist. And I assume you're saying these are local people, is that correct?
I think most of them are local, yes, but not all.
So they're going to be somewhere else in the community.
That's true. And what the city manager covered it well. I think it's the critical mass of the people with multiple diagnoses and chemical dependence living in a small place, living together in a small place, that creates...
And we couldn't just remove those people with the help of other agencies.
Well, and that's what I thought I heard you say earlier, and really, if
No. Not to manage the camp, no. If someone's causing trouble, could you just do what you would do if they were some other place?
And that's what we've been doing.
You've been doing it.
And
Because-
as you've heard from a number of people, the population of homeless and people who are chronically drug and alcohol addicted and have severe mental health conditions are in and out of the camp all the time. It's been impossible to manage when those folks are present, and there are so many that we couldn't possibly keep them all out.
But they're going to be somewhere.
That's correct.
And I think you're talking about expanding the car camping. Not everyone has a car, but I know you're talking about changing it to tent camping to neighborhoods, and that will be, I would think that would be more difficult if people who cause problems are around residential neighborhoods.
What I've heard Terry McDonald talk about is that the camping program has been very successful, and so what we would do is to really continue and add capacity to what is already a successful program and continue the successful pieces of that.
Some places, some neighbors have not been happy. I don't know about what do you mean by success? But so you think you could take care of all the people who have mental problems and addiction problems by moving them into neighborhoods?
No, we don't believe we'll be able to just take care of all the people that are in the camp, transitioning them into different places. We will absolutely work with service providers, continue to work with OE to try to make a very thoughtful and compassionate transition. And a lot of that, it's not into neighborhoods. We're not moving people into neighborhoods. What we're doing is continuing what others have articulated as a successful program and also looking for other ways to provide capacity in a thoughtful way.
Well, I would hope we would take a little more time, and also that we would listen to the people who've been in the camp and listen to the Occupy Eugene people instead of just the 7 of us deciding what to do. So suddenly, I mean.
But Andrea and Pat, at Q, I would just point out, I think that the car camping program we're discussing is where people allocate pieces of their parking lots or places for that people can live for a period of time in their vehicles, not the sort of curbside cars parking.
Mm-hmm.
Correct, and what we would expand it to is also include tents in that same kind of a situation and environment, so it expands the capacity of it.
I'd also add that I heard the chief say, and I know it is the intention, that they will be working with Occupy Eugene throughout the entire process and listening carefully and doing the best, and they are also being honest in saying they don't think they can resolve every issue that's there. They will do their utmost to use the capacity we have, and then we'll try to use a task force to build some capacity. But it's been a big issue. It is a big issue, and it's one that's important and meaningful in our community. And what I've also heard, and I know it's not to the satisfaction of anybody, but it is the fact that we think that there were some things we've learned from this that can help us build some capacity, not necessarily to solve everything, but where we've been is not building capacity. We've been sitting here and maybe seeing some attritioning of capacity in our community. So we want to take this as an opportunity to try to do better. And I just urge us in this conversations that follow this and into the next work that's ahead, that we really try hard not to talk about what people think people have done wrong, that we really try to talk about what we can do right together, and that we're building our capacity as a community to try to help with a really important issue in our community. So I just urge us to think on that level as we try to work through that today. Andrea.
Thank you, Mayor. So I just want to make a couple comments about Councilor Taylor's concerns. I agree it's going to be challenging to find placement for these people, for this population. There really isn't. I saw Terry McDonald at the Egan event, the memorial, and he pulled me aside and he said, you know, I don't know what we're going to do when the Occupy Eugene campsite closes, because we're at capacity at the Egan Warming Center. The mission's always at capacity. All the homeless shelters are at capacity. Because, you know, he put his hands up like this to me, and I was like, I don't know, Terry, I don't know what to tell you the answer is. And I think that that is part of our challenge as we go forward, is that we don't have the answer, and we need to work together to move the dial as much as we can. And there's no outcome that we can expect. I don't know where people are going to go, but Betty, I tell you, they've been in the bushes in my neighborhood for years. And, you know, I'm not saying that that's okay and that's humane. The mayor and I did a walking trip, went down underneath the overpass on Highway 99, and I'm not justifying any of this, but in my mind's eye, there was a woman there. She had all her dogs around her, and, you know, the impression I got was that folks band together for safety, and they have their dogs, and, you know, when you have a critical mass of that kind of a situation, it's very challenging. And that is not really what I think the intent of Occupy Eugene. I don't speak for them, but I think that a political movement is part of this isn't what they signed up for either. And I think they've been as challenged as to what the answer is too. I don't know if I'm right or wrong, but that's just kind of my impression. I'll go ahead and put the motion on the table since it was handed to me. I move to revoke the exemption for the overnight camping granted by the council on December 14th and to direct the city manager to ensure the restoration of the space not occupied by Occupy Eugene as soon as practical and as peaceful as
Practicable.
practicable. Practicable.
I'll
Thank you.
second the motion.
Thank you.
Moved and seconded. Pat?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. You know, the stark reality is that men and women and children who are homeless, who are occupying the camp today and other sites around Eugene, were there before the camp came, and they're going to be there after the camp came. Andrea, they're in the bushes close to your house, or in bushes close to all of our houses.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it's not a sad, it's not a happy reality,
No.
but it is the reality. That is the way it is. Councilor Taylor asked a couple of, I assume were more rhetorical questions about can you say where they're going to go. Well, nobody can actually say where folks are going to go, but in reality, they're going to go where they have been. And it points out something that's very important to us, that we need a redoubling of our effort to make certain that wherever possible, we can supplement what is already happening in Eugene. You know, by and large, I talk to people all over the place, and in Eugene, we do it better than just about any place else around as far as taking care of the needs of people who are the neediest. We take care of hunger issues in Eugene better than anyone else, and though we come far from solving the problems, we take care of homeless and housing issues as well as any other community in the nation. And I've heard from all over, far and wide, the reason that we stand out is not because we are deficient in the way we handle these issues, but because we are very proficient in the way we handle these issues. Not to say that we're doing it the best we can. And the task force, Mayor, that you have alluded to, that you have said is going to begin work on the 28th, one of the things that it needs to do is to see how we can leverage the resources that we have into making sure the system that we already have in place is as robust as it can possibly be in dealing with the issues as they change, as they come up, and as they grow, which we know that they are going to grow based upon our experience. So what we've seen is throughout the camp is that some people are paying a little bit more attention perhaps than they have in the past. The media certainly has been paying more attention than they have in the past. It's a chance for us to take a look at the wonderful systems that we do have in Eugene and make sure that they're as strong as they possibly can be and that they get the right kind of resources applied in the most efficient fashion to give us the best results.
Okay, ready to vote on the motion? All those in favor, please indicate. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. In opposition? 2, it passes. Now we're going to go on to the other ordinance, which is the expansion of the car camping to tent camping.
Right. Beth will hand out the ordinance. What this ordinance would do, it's the same as what I described last week. Right now, there's the car camping or vehicle camping program. As the city manager said a couple minutes ago, that program authorizes up to 3 vehicles to camp in parking lots with the owner's permission. There are requirements related to restroom facilities, trash. None of that would change. The only thing that this ordinance would do is it would define vehicle to include a tent. So right now, you can have up to 3 vehicles. If there's a site that only has 2 vehicles, then somebody who doesn't have a vehicle but has a tent would be able to camp there.
1 tent, Bud?
1 tent. So 1 tent equals 1 vehicle. In order for the council to consider this today, the first thing, Mayor, that you need to do is to ask whether all councilors consent to the council dealing with this today, even though we haven't gone through the normal notice and publication requirements.
Okay, so you heard Glenn. All of you consent to this?
Can I be heard, Madam Mayor?
Pardon?
Can I be heard on this, or is it just a yes or no?
You could be heard, but Betty has already indicated that she does not consent, and that means you cannot deal with this today.
All right. All right, then we'll just have to go through the regular, lengthier process.
Our intent would be to come back on January 9th at your first meeting with the formal process to adopt it.
Betty?
I'm willing to listen to some more reasons, but I do think that the public should be involved before we do something like this.
If the council, if all of you consent to allowing this to proceed today, then the next step would be for the mayor to open a public hearing today to allow people in the audience. She would have to determine how much time you're going to allow and how many people. And so you would then have a public hearing on the ordinance. Once the public hearing is closed, then the council would debate and vote on whether to adopt the ordinance.
Okay. I guess the people who are here could speak then. Okay, go ahead.
So you're in agreement?
Yes.
Everyone is in agreement?
If I could speak to that, Madam
Yes.
Mayor? I find this kind of hard to believe that we're conducting city business this way without giving people an opportunity to come in and voice their opinions from all sides of the argument. And that was my objection last week, was that it was, and I don't even know if it was noticed properly, that we were willing to completely ignore an existing regulation without any input from the entire public, giving them the opportunity. What we're addressing today is a minor tweak to something that we already have in place that's been proven. As was mentioned earlier, the tweak is just allowing tents instead of cars. Since this ordinance went in effect the first time, I believe the technology in tents is greater now than it was before. It's not a change in policy, and it's not requesting to completely ignore an existing rule or regulation that could possibly have endangered many people. Although deep inside I feel that it's the wrong way to proceed with this, I would be willing on this occasion to go ahead and move forward with a public hearing, and primarily because of what I've outlined before, and that also since last week's meeting I've heard from many, many people that supported my decision not to go along with a public hearing, and unfortunately I wasn't allowed to address that last week to try to let people understand why I was opposing moving forward with a public hearing. A majority of the people that I have heard from also that supported my decision said basically what I said about the existing car camp. If we kind of had broken it up into two different public hearings, I think I would have been easy to proceed with one but not the other. But at this point, like I said, deep down inside, I still believe this is not the way we should be conducting city business, but because of what I outlined earlier, I'm willing to proceed. The question I have, is there anybody in the audience that provides one of these car camps, presently providing a facility, so we could at least make sure we hear from them? Guess not. Okay.
So you're all in a...
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. No objection. Okay. So then the next step is to do the public hearing.
Correct.
So you open a public hearing, and I guess what we have to figure out right now is we've got 20 minutes till 1. We have to leave time for discussion after the hearing. So do you think like a half hour of hearing and then discussion? Is that...
You could take 3 on either side. Discussion. You can let them decide.
3 pro and 3 con? Or, Glenn, do you have any suggestions about this, other than...
You can, whatever
Let's
will
do it.
provide you with the most useful information.
Mike?
Looking around the room, I think a half hour or 2 minutes opportunities.
Just give them a microphone.
We'll go fast, yep. All right, so we'll do a half hour, 2 minutes, and we'll try to go between pro and con, if that's the way it works out, that we have that number of... Yeah, right, or neutral. So, is there... Yeah, come up here. So I'm going to, I guess I have to officially open a public hearing and ask if there's someone who wishes to come and speak, and I will ask the lady in the pink pants to come up. Yes. Yep.
Please state your name.
Please state your name.
Okay. My name is Irene Cardenas. I've been staying at Occupy for about a week and a half. I've been in Eugene about a week longer. And my concern with camping in an open tent is I feel much safer at Occupy, where when this drunk person came in and caused this problem, Occupy people on the site dealt with it and kept people safe. If I'm with my boyfriend in my tent, that that's some protection, but I would not feel safe just camping alone with one tent without a community around me. If I go up into the forest, I've heard of some bears. I've been in homeless shelters before where I try to be a very good person, and, some people have had some issues with that at, some people even at Occupy. But, particularly in homeless shelters, women, that it bothers them. I try to be a very good person, and it's not a good social environment. I've had my biorhythms measured. My nervous system is very well ordered, and usually that's not recognized at such places. And so I would ask people to consider, is sleeping just one tent going to cause a situation where there's an article in the paper the next day, well, these people that were staying in Occupy were now assaulted by a drunk person and there was no one around to handle the situation like they did at Occupy. Thank you.
Thank you. So I don't know whether to take that as a pro or a con. It's an observation, is what I would say. I'm going to go over here.
Mayor, you having
Yeah,
people state their name?
Yes, she did. Would you say your name, please?
My name is John Monroe, currently working with the occupation. I don't believe that the current measure is nearly sufficient to the community that we have in place. To think that a policy that Terry McDonald himself has acknowledged is already full by some minor extensions is actually going to deal with the 150-plus people with families and community networks on site. It would be an absolutely irresponsible decision of a supposedly representative body, and I think you should be representing those people even if they did not vote for anyone on this council. And the problem that is occurring right now is we're seeing a healthy response, and it's being spun negatively. What happened last night was a person was attacked. One of our medics came, provided CPR. Another member of the EPD came and finished the CPR. And by combination and cooperation between police and medics on the spot immediately, the situation was resolved. As Irene just pointed out, splitting people up and individuating them and exposing them to the elements that are trying to get in our camp right now without police protection, without medic response, is to throw them back out on the elements, to completely disregard their humanitarian needs, and to act as if we are not dealing with an emergency situation. Right now, there is a ton of negative press against Occupy Eugene, and I understand that there are many political and procedural things that we have to work out. But I guarantee you that the processes that you are currently considering are insufficient, and the backlash that it will have upon the larger community when they see how irresponsibly the supposed homeless problem is being treated will be very, very negative. And I'm asking that this council act responsibly to work with Occupy Eugene to give us sufficient time in the middle of the holidays to make sure that these families are taken care of, that they keep their community connections, that they still have contacts so that they can get their needs met, their addiction problems resolved, their violent issues resolved, and are not just simply thrown back into an uncaring world.
Councilor Farr.
There could be a little confusion that the testimony should be on the ordinance and not on the previous action that we've taken.
I think if I would interpret it right, I think what they're trying to do is tell you why they think the camping ordinance that you're proposing is not adequate. I think that's what I've heard.
That's what we're saying.
Yes, that's what I heard.
That would mean they want us to fail the ordinance.
That would,
Okay.
yes. Carol.
My name is Carol Berg Caldwell. I have not been staying at Occupy Eugene, but I go nearly every day since it was downtown and then at Alton Baker and then at campus and now at Washington Jefferson. But for 20 months I've been going to municipal court. And what I see by this Occupy Eugene is a sense of hope and safety. I appreciate that Betty Taylor brought out that when there are problems, respond to that. Because what I see at the encampment, and by going to court now, there is a sense of hope. These people who had been getting cited and tying up our police resources and court resources and jail resources are not so much because of the caring and the love at Occupy Eugene. So I do think this ordinance concerning opening up a tent here and a tent there is so lame, and I ask you to take a second look. Thank you.
Okay, let's see. I'm going to go to second row back. I think, well, maybe she doesn't have her hand up anymore. I'm going to go over here. Yes.
Good afternoon.
Identify yourself. Yep.
My name is
Big John, McCahill. I run the kitchen for OE. The car camping program is full. There's only 60 spaces. There's an 8-month waiting list. Where are you going to put these people? They're going to go back to the bushes around your house. Your house. Your house. Your house. Where else can they go? There is no place to house these people. The car camping program's full. To add a tent to the mix isn't going to work. It doesn't do anything. It doesn't add any extra spaces. There's 60 spaces. There's 150 people at this park that need to be housed. There's nowhere for them to go. The mission's full. Like Ms. Ortiz said, every service is full. There's people in here from the Egan Warming Center that they're full. There's nowhere for them to go except for back to the streets. There's going to be the Coalition of Homeless People are going to have a fundraiser at the Wow Hall here in a few days. I believe it's the 21st. They're going to read a list of 111 names of people that have died in this city homeless this year. Mr. Poling, do you want to add to that list?
Next, I just want to be, okay, now back in the second row. Yes.
My name is Kristen Carpenter. I'm with Occupy Eugene. I do not live on site, but I organize for the site. I feel that this kind of proposal that you're considering is something that makes you feel more comfortable, because unlike what we've done at Occupy Eugene, it displaces people and distributes them in a way that doesn't provide a continual reminder of the fact that you've had a complete inability to deal with the issues that people in our community are facing in terms of homelessness and poverty and complete wage disparity, and you continue to perpetuate a system of structural violence that will continue to oppress these people. And I think that this is a disgrace to consider it all, when really what we've done is make something that's completely visible, and that's why you want to make it, that's why you want to disintegrate the whole process, because it's in your face and because you have to see it every single day, and it's a continual reminder of your failure to deal with the issues that we're facing.
What we're talking about with
Will
the
you introduce
camping.
yourself?
My name is Jean Stacy. What we're talking about today, I think Kristen really had a good point, is we're trying to make ourselves feel better about doing something, because we all do care. What's unfortunate is we really aren't doing anything because we care. This is an age-old technique that's been used, that when a population becomes a threat to us, in this case, they're a threat because they're a shame. We're ashamed of ourselves. We're not ashamed of them. We're ashamed of ourselves. What we do is we divide them up in small groups so that they have no power. It's an age-old technique. In the camp, they have power. They have voice. That's the only reason we're here today, is because that voice is being heard. The camps are not a good idea because they say to the public, we're taking care of people, not a population, not a problem, but we're taking care of people when we're not taking care of people. And that's why I urge you not to engage in hypocrisy, which I feel this would be. And I hope you will not do that today. Thank you.
Blue shirt.
Thank you, Mayor and Councilors. My name's Mark Rust, and I'm a Eugene citizen. I live in Ward 4, Councilor Polling's district. I had sent a letter on the previous issues to the council this weekend, and thank you for your response. So just specifically in regard to this proposed ordinance, I had about a minute to look over one of the copies. I support the council adopting this ordinance today, and I would also just suggest that the council consider adding provisions for maybe additional tents instead of just considering tents as a vehicle that's allowed as part of the number that's allowed today. So that would work to build capacity in the existing car camps. So thank you.
Thank you. Over here, Allie.
My name is Allie Valkyrie. I'm an organizer with Occupy Eugene. I'm sitting in front of a table full of people who I have the utmost amount of respect for, and I know you all care deeply, but caring is very different from understanding. And pardon me if I make an assumption here and correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm sitting in front of a table full of people who have never known what it's like to spend a night on the street, cold, and I apologize. I apologize on your behalf. But what I will say is that if you all think that to divide everyone and to put them in car camping and to put them in tent camping is the solution to this problem, you are so mistaken. Splitting up this camp is one of the biggest mistakes that the city will ever make. And if you truly, truly, truly think that this is the answer to the problem, I ask you to just look inside your hearts, because it is not. I am a tiny little girl, and let me tell you, I feel safe on that site. And I'm thankful that I'm not homeless, but I have been on the street, and I can tell you that I would not feel safe inside a tent, and I would not feel safe at a parking lot. And this is a community full of people that keeps each other safe. And I think that there is such a lack of understanding as to the power of community and the power that this group has to keep each other safe. And again, I apologize, Counselor. But we need to keep these people safe. We have a responsibility as a community to care for each other. I know I can't sleep at night knowing that my family is going to be relegated to a parking lot and a tent, and this community is my family.
Any others? Okay, I'm going to close the hearing and ask for comments. Andrea?
Thank you, Mayor. I appreciate everybody coming forward and letting us know their feelings. So if I understand correctly, the message from Occupy Eugene is just to allow what's going on to continue, which is kind of interesting. I mean, because I've talked to Terry McDonald quite a bit about this issue the last couple of years during budget cycle, trying to find him more money to expand the number of sites is what I would like to see happen, personally. He already puts we pay him for X amount of sites, but then he puts money out of their own general fund into more sites, if I understand correctly. Because what we do is we pay for, when people sign up for this program, they pay for sanitation and trash. And then the organization provides the space. And I know that he has more than what we're paying for, so I would hope that we can go down that road, but, let him continue to pay for his share, and then we'll just add on if possible. I don't think that, some comments to respond to the comments. I do think this is responsible to have this conversation. I don't think this is a failure. I don't think the city has failed at taking care of everybody in the city the best that we can. I don't consider what we've done a failure. I think we've worked really hard. All the agencies in the community have worked amazingly, and I've watched as budgets have been cut, and they're cutting their staff, and they're not cutting their numbers of people that they're serving. I really take kind of an offense to that, because I think that, I think about all the dedicated social service providers in this community, and I would be offended if I were them to hear that. And I just want to make another comment about power to voice. I agree that when you gather people who are of like mind, you can have that power voice, and I've used that technique myself many a times. As a young person of color in this community, I've had a lot of personal challenges. But, the best way to make changes is to get involved and to infiltrate the organization that you want to affect. And basically, that's kind of where I feel I'm at, when I think about my position here that I've been in for 7 years. And I never forget those voices that I have supported me throughout the years, to remind myself of where I came from. So I would like to support this, and I hope that my fellow councilors can, because I think that it's a step in the right direction. We are aware that a lot of people don't have cars. It's hard to keep cars going. It's very expensive, so I think that the change is good, that if we can consider a tent a vehicle.
Okay, I've got Pat and then Mike.
Just a question, if I may. The ordinances, I'm reading it's providing for allowing tents in places where currently car camping is allowed. Now, the ordinances that came out of the committee work in the 90s and early 2000s the camping was allowed both in the in parking lots of establishments that allowed for that or that met the requirements, and also in driveways and backyards or in backyard camping. Does this extend to backyard camping?
No, this only deals with the parking lots. It's specific to, if you look at Section 2 of the ordinance, the provisions of 4.816 that are referenced are the ones related to the parking lot.
And the backyard is a different amendment. Okay. That's my question. Thank you.
As I understand it, this ordinance gives greater flexibility to those locations that allow folks to camp, and allows them to do so in different ways so as to allow many who may not have a vehicle to be able to camp as well, and to be able to have some manner of shelter and to exist someplace peacefully. So I'm happy to support it if it gives greater flexibility to folks who are in that place. To respond to some of the testimony, it's really interesting that John just left here, because I was going to say something. He gave testimony at a public hearing a few weeks ago that I thought was really meaningful and important. And what he said was, if I can paraphrase, and I hope I don't mess it up, he was hoping that we'd get the importance of creating civil society as opposed to a bureaucratic one, as opposed to the idea that the government has the duty to respond to everybody's problems and treat them and take care of them. I felt that he was trying to put forward the importance of people coming together to help solve problems as groups, as a civil society, and I agree with him about that. We may look at the solution in different sorts of ways, but I absolutely agree with the principle. The point is, what we've done today hasn't eliminated that option. It's eliminated the chance to camp in this one public park, but it has not eliminated the opportunity to work together towards that end. So I just encourage you to remember that.
Just, Betty, I'll put you in the queue here. A couple comments is that I honestly do not believe that one person around this table thinks that expanding the car camping ordinance is going to solve the homeless issue in our community. If anything, it's just one little tool that they're trying to put into place. I would also say that I certainly understand the folks in this room, at least most of them, have invested a lot in community, so I can understand why this seems like a poor alternative to them to that. I get that. My question about this ordinance is there a reason why you wouldn't just say if you're going to have 3 camping spots that they could all be tent or they could all be vehicle? Is there a reason why it's only, in this, the way it's written, it's only one tent? Is there some kind of reason for that?
This just says that a tent counts one tent counts as one vehicle.
So you could, if you had 3 spaces, you could have 3 tents. I just want to clarify that.
Yes.
Okay, all right. Thank you for that. Betty?
Okay, I just wanted to respond to what Mike said, people come together to solve problems. I think that's just what these people have been doing when they work together. And that's why I hate to see it broken up so suddenly. I hope that they will have a place where they can meet together once we dissipate them, which seems we've decided to do. I hope they will decide on a meeting place where they can meet regularly and continue to work together and try to solve problems. But I think that's been the good thing about this, that they have tried to solve their own problems. And they have from what I hear, I was only there once, wasn't there for a long time, but from what I hear, they have created a community and tried to take care of themselves and each other. And I know there's great disagreement, and we're through discussing that, I guess, because we already voted. But I do have one friend who lives nearby who said that she loves it because the people who were homeless in her yard don't have another place now. Thank you.
So I think where we are right now is we've had the hearing. We don't have a motion on the table, so we need a motion on the table. Mike?
May I move that we act to approve the ordinance submitted? I don't know what the number is, so.
I think what you meant to say was, I move to adopt Council Bill 5061, an ordinance temporarily amending the car camping ordinance.
He has quite a capacity for mind reading, that Glenn. Yes, that's what I meant to do exactly.
And that's what Pat meant to
And if I
second,
could-
probably.
Yeah, if I could speak just for a second
Yes.
here, too. Certainly, this will give, although not without expanding the number of locations, it will give more flexibility for people who are in this position. And I think that's a good thing. In a tangential sort of comment here, I would also like to add to something that George said previously. With our decisions today, our police officers are going to have some difficult work to do in the next few days. And I certainly, for one, hope that we are going to, as a council, support our police officers, because their job, as I see it, is not to make policy, but to simply carry out the policy that we've enacted today. So I certainly hope we're going to be supportive of our officers who are going to be carrying out the policy that we've created. Thank you.
Andrea. I've shot myself in the foot so much today already, I'm just going to have to respond to that, Councilor Clark. You know, I do support the police department. I am very thankful for the work that they do following policy, but they have to work within their policy, and that's what is the expectation that I think I personally have. I have no problem with them enforcing the law as long as it's within their policy.
All right, Pat and then Betty.
Thank you. Just a little bit of historical context. You know, I'm reading that this came about in 1998. Council repealed camping in industrial area and expanded camping options at businesses and public properties based on Council Committee on Homelessness and Youth recommendations. St. Vincent de Paul received a contract, et cetera, et cetera. This program continues to operate and is generally regarded as very successful. Now, the historical context there is, prior to this ordinance taking place, camping was happening largely in the Whitaker area. It was largely on Washington Street, excuse me, and it was pretty tight quarters. It was very difficult to maintain any kind of sanitation, any kind of orderly conduct. This camping ordinance that we have took place to basically eradicate the difficult situation that was happening in that area. But it is, as it says here, generally regarded as very successful, albeit certainly not addressing all the issues that we face and not addressing all the people who need help. So I would like to consider, we are considering, by way of the Mayor's Committee, expanding the ordinance and perhaps going out and soliciting more spaces to accommodate the camping. And I think that to make this, that it is generally regarded as very successful. I think we have an opportunity at this point to make it an even more successful program that really does shine out as one of the best programs of its type in the nation.
Okay, and Betty?
I'm conflicted about how to vote on this. I agree with Jean Stacy that it's a little hypocritical, but I suppose it's maybe better than nothing. And I hope that when the police start moving people out, that there won't be any tear gas or pepper spray or tasers.
Let's build on our best expectations. Andrea?
I can't even respond to that, Councilor Taylor. I just see, just reviewing the ordinance, and I see provided an immediate effective date. So there's providing a sunset date in here, Glenn, and that causes me to pause. Can you explain to me in English or Spanish that
Not in Spanish. Section 5 of the ordinance says that this would be repealed as of April 15th. This ordinance, not the car camping ordinance, but this change would be repealed as of April 15th unless the council amended it, extended it, or made it permanent. And the only reason for doing that is because we brought this to you, the public hasn't had a chance to weigh in. It gives you an opportunity to revisit it next spring.
Okay. That's fine. That's good. Okay.
And we'll make sure to bring it back to you in plenty of time so that if you want to extend it, you can.
Okay, thank you.
The only other comment I would make, just to put it in the mix, is in addition to this little tool that we're talking about, just to expand what we already have, we also had talked about the effort to have temporary shelter for people with mental health issues and addiction
bed.
issues, wet bed.
Yeah.
And so that's something, another piece that has come out of this Occupy experience and has not gone away. I just want to let you know that. Those are just...
The rest of what you passed the other day still applies.
Right.
Still moving forward.
And there'll be more, we hope more coming as we have a chance to really see if we can move it forward. And I would also think that, having listened to you all, and certainly you're capable of doing it on your own, but if in the process of trying to figure out how to move forward, if the city can be helpful in some way with a place for people to meet, I think they would be interested in that as well. So, anyway, yes?
No, I'm done
I'm just
talking,
saying that,
Mayor.
I just
I'm
wanted
done
to pick
talking,
that
Mayor.
up as an important piece of what people felt was needed and it's part of community, and it's also part of working together on issues concerning the whole lot of folks. Did you have anything you wanted to say about that, Chief? Or no? Okay.
No.
All right, so I think we're ready to vote on the ordinance.
Mayor, before you vote, just let me point out that it has an emergency clause, so it would take effect immediately, but only if 6 of you vote for it. If
Okay.
5 of you vote for it, then it won't take effect for 30 days.
Okay. All those in favor, please indicate. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and none in opposition. It passes. With that, I think we are through with the business of the day. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor.